Good morning and welcome, colleagues. Fall is one of my favorite times of year, not just because of Halloween, Thanksgiving, and the impending holiday season, but it also seems to be the time of year when energy outlooks are released by corporations, analysts, and institutions around the world. And we're always grateful when the authors of these outlooks come here to CSIS to talk about them. And that's the subject of our event today. Our guests need no real introduction for this community. Ken and Kobayashi-san are both friends of CSIS. We've seen them come here and present the IEEJ's views on global energy markets over the years, and we're going to have a chance to hear what their current thinking is about the future of global energy. And then we'll have a brief conversation, hopefully lots of time for Q&A with today's assembled audience, as well as our colleagues online. With that, you're all welcome here at CSIS. If you need anything while you're here, please do let us know. In the event of emergency or some sort of alarm goes off, just follow the instructions of a CSIS staff member. Ken, I think you are going to come up and introduce the report and talk a little bit about the results. And we look forward to hearing from you, sir. Welcome to CSIS once again. Please welcome Ken with me.
Very good morning to you all. My name is Ken Koyama, and Joseph, thank you very much for your kindest introduction to me and Kobayashi and IEEJ. I am extremely happy to be back here to present IEEJ Outlook this year for your reference and for your consideration and for the good discussion this morning. Firstly, I'd like to thank that, of course, once again, Joseph and Jen, who is not here today, and CSIS for hosting this event. I truly appreciate your collaboration with IEEJ. And as you know, that IEEJ every year make annual exercise of publishing our long-term energy outlook up to 2050s. And today I am most happy to share our perspective on the global energy, long-term global energy outlook. But before going directly into that outlook, I just wanted to draw your attention that our energy world, there's so much uncertainties, instability, and security is revisited as a priority, while that climate change initiative or climate change challenge remain unchanged, so that we need to simultaneously achieve energy security and climate change. But it is really difficult task to be overcome, simply because that now energy transition seems to require the additional cost, which has a big implication, social and political, economic implication to us, everybody. And also, we need to pay great attention to the global fragmentation, which also has a serious implication for energy landscape in the world. And of course, all these factors can be very much affected by the U.S. energy and climate policy. So under the circumstances, we need to make a strategic consideration on our energy future. For IEEJ Energy Outlook 2026, we have a kind of a regular scenario as always. One is a reference scenario which assumes a kind of business as usual future up to 2050. At the same time, we also have a kind of alternative scenario, advanced technology scenario, we call it ATS, which assumes that the maximum introduction of energy-related to advanced technology. As you may know, this is a kind of a bottom-up approach, forecast type projection, which contrasts to that backcasting approach symbolized as IEA's NZE, net zero emission scenario. And in addition to these regular scenarios, this year's IEEJ Outlook has special features as a highlight, which can be presented by my colleague Kobayashi later on. First one is the analysis of integration cost of VRE. Second one is the impact of AI and data center expansion. In particular, we focused on the potential energy saving or energy efficiency improvement by use of AI. And the third topic is carbon budget. and its implication on that 1.5 degrees target and the importance of adaptation. And as my first part of my presentation focused on that regular scenario and advanced technology scenario, the message from this year's Outlook especially emphasized the importance of India and ASEAN. Clearly that the gravity center of global energy market is shifting very rapidly. In the past half century, OECD nation, as you know very well, continue to be the gravity center, but the share is shrinking, and China became the gravity center in the past 3 decades. But because of the slower economic growth and declining population, Chinese energy consumption in the long term is going to decline. But now India and ASEAN country can make up for this potential projected energy demand decline, both in OECD and China. Actually, in our calculation, India and ASEAN's energy demand incremental volume is equivalent to that 90% of projected energy demand growth in the world. So now India and ASEAN will be the key part of our energy story to affect that the global energy security as well as global decarbonization effort. And the second important point is, of course, that the power demand and generations. Because of AI and data center, which will be discussed by Kobayashi later on, the global power demand will increase very substantially in two of our both scenarios. In particular, in advanced technology scenario, because of the electrification and industrialization and AI and data centers effect, the global power generation will increase by more than 90% from the current level up to 2050s. So how to meet the growing demand in power in a stable manner, affordable manner, and sustainable manner will become a real important challenge for our globe. And there's a circumstance that, of course, that primary energy demand trajectory will be affected very, very substantially. In particular, fossil fuel demand, blue line shows that oil demand, red line shows that the coal demand, yellow demand, line shows that natural gas demand, and the dotted line is the projection trajectory for the reference scenario, while solid line is the advanced technology scenario. You can see there's a big difference between the reference scenario and advanced technology scenario. In particular, oil demand and coal demand will be very much affected. And yellow line, natural gas demand, of course, it will have a significant difference between the two scenarios. But the main point here is natural gas demand is very likely to be very resilient in the long term. In other words, natural gas, LNG, can be selected as a very pragmatic option to address the long navigation of energy transition. And with regard to the LNG, as you can see from the red line of reference scenario global LNG demand, we can expect that the global LNG demand is likely to continue to rise up to 2050, while purple line, that advanced technology scenario, the global LNG demand may peak somewhere around 1930s and 40s, but it will not decline very substantially. And for your information, I personally believe that the reality is likely to lie somewhere between this red line and purple line because of our very nature of assumption. As I mentioned that advanced technology scenario assumes maximum introduction of advanced energy technology. So I think that the global LNG demand is likely to remain very, very sound and likely to increase even in our long-term future. But if we compare the demand line and supply potential, as you know very well, up to early 2030s, supply potential can easily exceed the projected demand, which will again have a serious implication for global LNG supply demand. For the years to come, I think that there will be a downward pressure for the marketed LNG price. So I think that it will be very important for LNG consumer country like Japan, how to make this situation best utilize, maximize our national interest. Under the circumstance that the CO2 emission trajectory will be affected again, on your left-hand side picture, the global CO2 emission pathway shown in blue line is a reference scenario CO2 emission, which sees that almost flattened out CO2 emissions, while red line ATS CO2 emission is going to see that substantial decline up to 2050s. In reality, that we project that 2050 ATS global CO2 emission is 60% lower than the current level, very substantial decline, but again, it is not zero. Why not zero? Simply because on the left-hand side picture indicates that the non-power sector decarbonization and non-OECD decarbonization remain seriously difficult. That's the case. And our analysis, this year's analysis also included the special analysis for India and ASEAN. For the sake of time, I will be very brief. This first picture for India and Malaysia as an example of ASEAN country, we'll see that the very, very big jump in power demand. So how to meet this phenomenologically rising power demand in these countries will be very, very serious issues, not only for these countries, but also for the entire region and probably for United States and Japan. To help the transition of these countries will become a very important issue, not only from the energy perspective, but also for geopolitical perspectives. And this line indicates that increasing import dependency of ASEAN and India, as you know very well, although already that in terms of oil, they are becoming a very, very serious net importer of oil. But in terms of gas, for example, for ASEAN country, they are now net exporter of gas or LNG, but they are going to become a very serious net importer of these fossil fuels. Again, how to meet these import requirements will be very important, not only from the global perspective, but also from the U.S. perspective as well, because that now U.S. is seeing that the big wave of global LNG supply. So how to meet these growing import dependency in the region and big wave of supply is an important challenge for the world. And also it requires a huge amount of investment. In total, India and ASEAN and other Asian emerging economy in combination, more than $6 trillion additionally needed to address that clean energy transition. How to accommodate this investment need will be a serious challenge for us. And from the viewpoint of Japan as well, as you know well, Japan is pursuing the Asia Zero Emission Community initiative, where we try to promote the energy transition successfully, both in economic affordable manner for the region, and again, this is a very important issue for the geopolitical perspective as well. I'll stop here, and I'd like to ask my colleague Kobayashi-san to make a presentation on the special feature of IEEJ Outlook.
Hello, my name is Yoshikazu of the Institute of Energy Economics Japan, and I'm very grateful for hosting our seminar at the CSIS. Thank you very much for Joseph for organizing this seminar. I will explain about 3 topics in our Outlook. The first one is integration cost of VRE, or variable renewable electricity, to the power system. This chart shows the kind of graphical image of entire power system. Because currently the unit cost of renewable electricity is lower than those of the conventional power sources. So if we increase the share of those VRE, obviously the cost for VRE increases, but we can reduce the cost for conventional power sources. So if we combine this cost, I mean the sum of yellow part and green parts, the entire cost will be downward. But we must not forget about the integration cost to adopt those variable renewable electricity to the power system. Integration cost is a cost which we need to add to manage the intermittent generation from solar and power. It includes dispatchable power sources, battery system, as well as a curtailment by the of generation of solar and power. And we need to also count on the loss of electricity by utilizing battery system. So if we include those integration costs to the sum of yellow part and green parts, the entire cost curve will be like concave downward. This means there will be a point where we can achieve minimum cost, somewhere between 100% and 0%. So we did this analysis in the context of ASEAN, and we found that at the share of VRE at the 34%, the entire cost will be minimized. This means if the share of VRE is lower than 34%, we can reduce the entire cost by increasing the share of VRE. But if the share goes beyond 34%, we need to pay extra cost as a total. And such incremental costs will be different across countries. Obviously, if the size of power demand is larger, the cost for incremental cost will be also larger. And this figure shows the incremental cost that is occurred beyond the optimal point will be the largest in Indonesia, followed by Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines. This is about the first topic of integration cost of VRE, and then I'd like to move on to the carbon budget issue. I think it is becoming more common to question the validity of 1.5 degrees Celsius target in the discussion of climate change. And this is our interpretation in that argument. When we talk about the temperature increase and the GHG emissions, we need to think about carbon budget. Carbon budget is the amount of GHG which we are allowed to emit to maintain the temperature rise to a certain level. According to the latest assessment by IGCC, the remaining carbon budget is just 130 gigatons. This means we are just allowed to emit another 4 years if we continue the current level of emissions to maintain the temperature rise below 1.5 degrees. But even though we can gradually reduce the GHG emissions, we need to achieve carbon neutrality by 2032. So I think most of you can agree that this target of carbon neutrality is practically infeasible. So we need to prepare for more higher temperature rise. And the picture on the left-hand side shows the GHG emission forecast based on our ATS, advanced technology scenarios. The red dotted line is the CO2 emissions from energy sources in our ATS. But as you know, GHG is emitted not only from energy sources, but also from non-energy sources. So we added such emissions from non-energy sources and extend our emission reduction path beyond 2050. And we found that according to this analysis, the GHG emission will be net zero in 2073. And the picture on the right hand shows the IPCC's analysis about the required emission path to achieve 2 degrees Celsius. This square in the purple color shows the required timing to achieve the carbon neutrality to maintain the temperature rise below 2 degrees. So the point is, these two figures shows that our ATS is consistent with the path towards the 2 degrees Celsius. So we believe that our ATS will be good benchmark in seeking for 2 degrees Celsius target. And if we allow higher temperature rise, we also need to prepare for a more adverse effect or severe climate phenomenon. So one of the implications from our analysis is that we need to pay more on the adaptation in addition to mitigation. But the reality is not really good. The actual spending for adaptation is shown in the top of this chart, but the required spending for adaptation is shown in the bottom lower two bars. So the actual spending for adaptation is far smaller than the required level. So this means we need to pay more attention to adaptation in addition to mitigation efforts. Finally, I'd like to move on to the AI part. As we all know that increased use of AI and data center just pushes up the power demand in this sector, particularly since the year 2021. We did analysis how we can save energy for a data center. By adopting various advanced technologies, we found that the power demand for data center can be reduced by 20%. Most of the power savings will come from the energy efficiency improvement of ICT part, but also from the improvement of PUE or power usage effectiveness, as well as a more optimized calculation method. And we also did analysis how AI can save energy. There's much discussion for energy for AI, but there aren't much discussion for AI for energy. We did analysis how AI can save energy in different sectors, and we found that we can save some 178 million tons of oil equivalent energy by utilize AI. And the largest saving will come from the industry sector, followed by transport and residential commercial. The conclusion part is just to repeat what we have explained, so maybe I'd like to stop here and have more questions and discussions. Thank you very much.
I sit on the far right, you two sit over there. Thank you for the presentation. That was really interesting. I want to ask about three things, and then I think we can open to the audience. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Good.
Ken, maybe I could start with you. You know, you mentioned uncertainty and ambiguity in our energy future. How have which uncertainties have affected this year's World Outlook compared to previous ones? Like, what's different for the reader?
Good question, or difficult question you asked, Joseph. Thank you. I think that this year we paid special attention to the effect of fragmentation, of course. And today, I had no time to speak about that rare earths or critical mineral or other clean tech dominance. But clearly, I think that this can be a very important element to the strategic consideration for the long term. And I do believe that how to choose strategically the energy option has a big implication on that energy security in a broadly defined energy security.
And how do you see, you mentioned energy security being sort of like rising in priority for a lot of countries. How are we seeing that play out in government decision making or in markets?
For example, when as a Japanese, I can explain this by the kind of example, as an example for Japan's strategic energy decisions.
Yes.
We normally revised our strategic energy plan every 3 years. That sixth version of strategic energy plan was cabinet approved in October 2021. At that time, we focused on the discussion of climate change and decarbonization. Officially, we use the terminology that S+3, safety, energy security, environment, and economic efficiency or economic affordability. But in reality, at that time, everything was focused on decarbonization.
Yeah.
But 3 years later, the newest version was cabinet approved February this year, which means that the previous 1 year was a period of government discussion. Everybody is focusing on what's the implication on the international energy market instability, on unpredictability, rising tension in the geopolitical world, global fragmentation. On top of these international energy landscape, we need to pay greater attention to the rising power demand in Japan.
Right.
You know that Japan is regarded as a very matured society. Economic growth is not high. Population is declining. So up to 2 years ago, everybody believes that our power demand is going to decline in the long term. But now, many people believe that our power demand is rising in the long term.
Right.
And as everybody can understand that in the energy infrastructure, or in particular the power infrastructure, it takes time.
Yeah.
So if we believe that our demand is going to down, it's fine. But right now we changed our mindset. Well, demand is going to increase, so we need to do something right now.
Right.
So this affects the perception of the government discussion. How to secure our energy is most kind of prioritized issues. I think that this is a kind of a common phenomenon in the world. I explained it in Japan's case, but probably it will be the same in the United States or China or European nations. And one more thing.
Please.
Probably that energy security can include the issue related to the affordability. That energy cost run-up creates lots of pressure in the United States, in Japan, in EU. When I visited several times in European countries this year, I really felt that the increased energy cost is damaging the economy and society. So we need to seriously consider that the impact of possible rise in energy cost for our civic life and economy and industry.
Well, it's I fully agree. We've new electricity demand has come to the U.S. and shocked all of us in its potential magnitude. 50 years ago, our power system grew relatively quickly, but for the last 20, it has not. And so we're confronting that challenge just as much as Japan is. How much is the artificial intelligence and data center revolution affecting Japanese expectation for electricity? Yoshi, you had these really interesting analysis. Thank you for looking at both sides of the ledger when it comes to AI. But is that really what you're thinking about and looking at right now?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. As Dr. Koyama mentioned, we sort of expected that our power demand will just keep declining, but now we found that it turned to increase. And according to the latest basic energy plan, our power demand can increase by 20% from the current level, which is certainly pushed up by the new demand for the data center and caused by AI. So the demand increase by the data center is becoming a real issue in Japan. So we need to prepare for such demand increase. We are not really sure to what extent the data center will increase. But in our analysis, we researched the current plan of data center construction. So our demand outlook is we believe it's more precise and correct based on the current information. But again, the demand increase by a data center is getting real phenomenon, not only in a country but also in other parts of the world.
Yesterday, I was at an event with several government officials, and one of the things that they highlighted was not just data center electricity demand, but hopefully data centers spur economic growth above expectation of a point or a point and a half per year. Clearly, that will have implications for energy consumption well outside the data centers themselves. And you looked at the efficiency case, but are you also thinking about the secondary case when it comes to the energy impact of artificial intelligence as it affects the whole economy?
Yes, thank you for pointing out that issue. Yes, you're right. The more we utilize AI, we can expand our economic activity, which eventually result in economic growth and energy demand. And at the same time, as we know that the term Jevons products, if energy efficiency improves, we will spend more energy.
Yep.
So because we can save energy. So the effect of Jevons paradox and the feedback effect of the increased AI will certainly work to push the energy demand upward. But again, we still believe that AI can save energy quite significant amount by having big data and more put forecast and forecast element in our economic operation. So it's quite uncertain how much we can see the net increase of energy demand by AI, but we still believe AI can play a quite significant role to be more efficient in energy use.
Well, obviously, this is a source of incredible uncertainty. And please, Ken.
May I?
Yes?
I just want to follow up to the Kobayashi-san's comment very briefly. Firstly, that our analysis for that AI's potential energy saving presented by Kobayashi-san was made as a kind of special additional cases. As I explained, that our ATS assumes a maximum introduction of energy technology, which includes energy efficiency technologies. So in this sense, that the ATS energy demand projection does not include the effect of AI utilization.
Yep.
So without that AI utilization, we expect that a certain substantial amount of energy saving. And this year, we made from this ATS point how that the AI can deep contribution to reduce energy consumption. So that's one point that I'd like to emphasize on. And secondly, as Joseph pointed out, that we also expect that the AI data center can really contribute to our economic growth and economic expansion.
Yes.
But at the same time, that I personally believe that there's some kind of overheating over expectation may happen. So I think that we need to be very cautious how actually AI and data center can contribute to our actual economic growth and economic development.
Yes, I totally understand the conservatism that you have there. The half a point to a point and a half is obviously an incredibly broad range, and I've taken that. I've kind of used that range because it comes from a variety of financial institutions and economic or academic analyses. Right, you see wild numbers on the other side, 5% increase in GDP. No, I don't. I think that's quite unlikely. But I hear you very well. There's two more issues I want to touch on before we turn to the audience. One is LNG. So your market forecast shows pretty substantial growth in global LNG markets. And how should the U.S. reader, our current government wants to be the best LNG provider for the world. We have a very aggressive administration when it comes to kind of looking for places to export and set LNG into trade deals. How should we be thinking about the geopolitics of all that demand growth that you foresee in Southeast Asia?
I think that in this area that Japan and the United States can work together in a very big manner, I think. Actually, we in Japan already made various efforts to increase the lifting of U.S. LNG, and Japanese companies already made a commitment to increase the U.S. LNG lifting. If my counting is correct, in the year 2029, Japan's LNG import from the United States will be more than double from the current level. And I think that this can be very important. But compared with the huge amount of U.S. supply expansion, Japan cannot absorb everything.
All filled up.
Of course. And Korea, Taiwan, these traditional LNG buyer will also try to increase this volume. But again, it will not be enough. I think that market development in Southeast Asian countries and India and other emerging economy can be very, very important source. And the point here is these markets are price sensitive. And I do believe, as I indicated in my pictures, abundant supply up to the early 2030s clearly has an impact on the downward pressure for marketed price of LNG. As you all know, that the traditional LNG buyers in Japan mostly utilize that JCC, which is different animal from that marketed LNG pricing. But for the emerging price-sensitive market, the period up to early 2030 will create a big chance for these competitive priced LNG can penetrate into the market. So I do believe that this is a kind of truly win-win situation for the supplier, like United States, and consumer in the emerging market, so that they, in case of emerging market in Asia, they can contribute to the, I should say, affordable energy transition by mostly utilizing the LNG to replace coal. So I think that this is really important. In that sense, that Japan can cooperate both for the United States and emerging Asian country. Actually, this is a very similar concept of JUSEP, Japan-United States Strategic Energy Partner, which was agreed between Mr. Trump and the former Prime Minister Abe. So I think that now our new Prime Minister Takaichi-san can follow this concept to create a kind of JUSEP 2.0.
Oh, very interesting. And so, you mentioned the connection with coal and the displacement of coal. Your scenario, it's an interesting concept because right now, COP is going on in Brazil. 2 or 3 years ago, COP at Glasgow, we were talking about the globe moving off of coal on an accelerated pathway. Your scenario, many of the other scenarios we're seeing this year show that coal is a very sticky resource. How much real displacement of coal consumption do you think this a bullish LNG scenario for Southeast Asia will be able to accomplish?
Again, my personal view is that it depends on the commercial competitiveness. So that's why when the supply expansion, mainly from the United States, push down the price of LNG, market price of LNG, that will be very helpful to make LNG competitive against coal.
Yep.
But as you just pointed out rightly, in many parts of Asia now that coal is very sticky.
Well,
coal power generation is newly constructed,
Yeah.
and this newly constructed power generation can be used for a long time. But in the last several years, in the last 2-3 years, we started to argue that energy transition or energy addition. So energy demand is keep rising.
Yep.
That the newly incremental volume can be supplied by new clean energy sources, including renewable, nuclear power, whatever.
Yep.
But the existing volume is not so easy to replace, I think, if the price structure is not remain unchanged. Again, that's
Yes.
why LNG pricing can be very, very important area.
So, the other, if we can find analysts around the world who have very optimistic views about the falling cost of renewable power, and renewable power that also now comes with batteries to help deal with the intermittency problem that you analyzed, Yoshi. When in this case study, but you also saw some very high costs of integrating high degrees of variable renewables. How does technology advancement play out in your scenarios, and how might a sort of a battery-rich world affect that thinking?
Yes, thank you for the question. We also included the expected cost reduction battery system, as well as other facilities to manage such intermittency of electricity generation. Our finding, the optimal rate of VRE percentage might be a bit lower than widely discussed, but we still think that that is will be the point if we include all cost. There are several analyses to include those integration costs to identify the optimal power mix made by other analysts and organizations. But we found that not all integration costs are included. Some analysis did not include the loss of electricity used by batteries, or other analysis did not include the cost for curtailment caused by the higher share of VREs. So we just calculated what happens if we included those all items into the analysis. Then we found that result. But this is just one sort of analysis, which there are many uncertain factors. One of them is to what extent we can include the demand response to manage those intermittency. If we become more optimistic about people's energy use based referring to the price signal, then our integration cost might be a bit lower. But there are many. My point: there are many uncertainties in this technology to manage the intermittency. So we just keep refining our analysis in the future.
Well, it's a very interesting study. Thank you both for coming here and sharing it with us. If you'll permit me, I'd like to turn to the audience for a couple questions. Yes. Audience members, we welcome your participation. Just please remember to stand up, introduce yourself and whom you represent, and then questions typically or ideally have a brief prepositional statement and then a sentence which goes up at the end. And you're welcome to try and mop up what I've missed with our authors. So please raise a hand and we'll have a microphone come around.
Hello, I'm Sohani. I'm a graduate student at Johns Hopkins CSIS. And you sort of mentioned in your second scenario that your second scenario mentions advanced technology, like the advanced technology scenario. So I was just wondering, especially for like emerging economies, since their power demand is increasing and they have to manage their developmental priorities, what will financing look like for these policy changes and integration of these advanced technologies? Thank you.
So your question about the financing of the new technology. Actually, that I assume that from the technical and technological perspective, how we can assume that the extent of penetration. So, which means that finance can be achieved, or financing is not a big problem. But in reality, I totally agree that in the real market, we need to secure financing of new technology. But I think that I got your point. But in terms of technology development, we made a kind of expert judgment based on the respective technology. In particular, inside Japan, we had a lot of industry hearing or expert hearing, and based on these hearing, we made a kind of judgment on these technologies.
Yes, in the back.
My name is Ann Vroom. Thank you. I wanted to ask you, will the IEEJ be involved in some of the analysis of projects that are to be included in the $550 billion Japan-U.S. deal? Thank you, particularly with regard to energy, obviously.
Thank you very much for your question, and my short answer is no. It's a government-to-government talk, and by chance, I was in Washington, D.C. when this investment was announced when I was in D.C. So I was very surprised by the number. So I think that the government side is also probably that a very limited number of the government officials had a very detailed idea on that investment. Of course, after this very ambitious investment plan is being agreed, I think that there is a huge amount of discussion inside the Japanese government and industry as well that will lead to some, I should say, successful U.S.-Japan, that recent summit meeting between Mr. Trump and our Prime Minister Takaichi.
Everyone here was hoping you guys had details on these deals, right?
Yeah, good morning. My name is E.J. Hogan. I'm a consultant. I was just wondering how sensitive your analysis is to policy changes. You mentioned Trump 2.0, but of course, President Trump may not be around after 4 years. And so how do you smooth that out, or is that part of your regular scenario or your ATS scenario, given the lots of policy uncertainty there exists as well?
Thank you very much for your question, but probably politically, our scenario, of course, that in real world, the policy change is very, very influential in the short term in particular. But our long-term projection will not depend on some specific policy. For example, business as usual scenario has no serious impact on the current or future policies. The ongoing policies, that economic development, energy price is a key determinant. And in terms of ATS, we assume that the introduction of technology, and I think that in this sense that even if Mr. Trump or some president from the Democrat, I do believe that in the past several years, we did not change any, make any big changes in our assumption. More importantly, the cost of technology is a key important determinant. If that we believe, for example, cost of new technology in certain area of cost can reduce significantly, we will assume that these technology will much bigger penetration. But our analysis did not take into account of the kind of political sensitivity.
Adam? We were all waiting for Adam to raise his hand.
Thank you, Joseph. Adam Szymanski. I'm a senior advisor for CAPSARC, which is an advisory think tank in Saudi Arabia, but I'm also a non-resident advisor here at CSIS, so I'm very proud of that. So thank you, Joseph.
As are we.
And thank you, Koyama-san and Kobayashi-san, for the really interesting presentation. Ken, this question is for you. I noticed, I think it might have been your first or second slide, you said that you have a reference case. And I noted that for the first time in 5 years that the International Energy Agency has reinstated their reference case. They call it current policy scenario. Could you talk about the value of having a reference case and how it helps inform the work that the IEEJ does? Thank you.
Thank you, Adam, for your great question. I think that role of reference scenario is to provide a kind of reference or the point of comparison from what is very likely in the future if all the trend is going as a kind of business as usual. From these point of comparison, we can make a good political analysis or economic analysis how things or the world can be different. Of course, by doing this, that we can do, broadly speaking, 2 ways. One is forecasting based on the difference in assumption, and the other approach is backcasting, where we can put the goal first and how world should change to reach that goal. I think that the both way is very, very efficient and I should say meaningful, but we need to be careful the difference between the 2 types of analysis. But again, to do that, I think that some of the reference is important. That's why we, IEJ, continue to provide a reference scenario. So in this context, I would like to very much welcome that IEA's decision to come back to have that CPS again. I think that, of course, that there is a lot of political discussion inside IEA, taking into account of pressures, international pressure, probably from the United States. But I think that I think clearly that inclusion of CPS is very, very good in terms of analytical point of view. I am, of course, doing a lot of peer reviewing of IEA's work, including those in World Energy Outlook. So when I first understand that they are thinking about the CPS to be back, I really welcome that concept. Of course, they are doing good work to provide other scenario like STEP or NZE, but to have the good comparison for STEPs and NZE, I think that the CPS can play a very important role. And I think that the CPS and IEJ's reference scenario has numbers of similarity, and I think that we can make a good, in a sense, collaboration in terms of analysis from now on, I think.
So I think we've got time for one more, if there's one more question from the group. Yeah.
Hi, Evan Harji with Aramco. One of your slides mentioned that there's the growing gap between ideals and reality as we think about the energy system. And just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on what trend do you see in terms of that dynamic between ideal versus reality? Is the debate and the analytical community making progress in bridging that gap? Just appreciate your thoughts on that.
Thank you very much for your very important question. I personally think when the world started to dash for the carbon neutrality, particularly in the year 2020, most of the long-term forecast focused on that aspirational target or ideal. But after that, firstly, we had an impact on Ukraine crisis, energy cost rise, and it has a political, societal implication in everywhere in the world. And then we recognize a gap between the aspiration and reality. And long-term focused society started to look the widening gap and gradually focused on more realistic and pragmatic approach. And this is happening not only in the long-term energy analysis circle, but also the actual policy-making world. I mentioned something about the European situation, but when I traveled to many European countries, I started to recognize there are two different sort of gap between aspiration and reality. In case of Europe, I found that the most aspirational goal is set by European Commission, and there is some gap between the European Commission and respective European countries. I think that even if the Commission continue to say that we need to be very, very ambitious to reach the climate goal, I think it is fine, it is important, but respective government or countries, policy makers need to address their own economic and societal circumstance. But also there are, I think, in my view, the second gap, the gap between the country's decision maker and consumer or industry in respective countries. So in my view, there are two different set of gap. So I think that long-term energy forecasting circle is identifying these emerging gap and address this. So that's why, in a sense, probably IEA's decision to come back to CPS can reflect these change in the perception and stance towards a long-term energy future. Again, this is my personal reading at all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should close the program, but I want to again thank both of you for your time and sharing your insights with us. This is an important piece of work, and we look forward to it every year. So thank you again. And hopefully when we meet again next year, we'll have a clearer picture between reality and aspiration.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, thank you for joining us. For those who joined online, thank you as well. Joseph Majkut signing off for CSIS.